everybody.
Welcome back.
We're back after a week off. It seems 2023 has been unforgiving, and our boy here has also gotten the COVID. Are you still testing positive as of today?
I haven't done it today. I did it yesterday, and yesterday was still positive. And it's just one of those things you can't shake. I'd gone forever. I never got it. It finally caught up to me.
Yikes. What about the symptoms? Are they still there? Because you seem in right spirits. This time last week you were saying I'm feeling icky. You were in an icky mode.
I was icky last week, more like exhausted. You know, it was like in a movie when you see the soul being pulled out of somebody. That's what it felt like.
Yes, the fatigue,
this
I remember.
Week, it feels like a bad cold.
Well, when I had it, we appropriately did cast on sickness horror or viral horror. But we're kind of doing the opposite of that, where this is the opposite of feeling down, whereas we're talking cocaine bear today on episode 48.
Cocaine bear, which is probably where I got COVID. No, I loved this movie. I love this movie.
I loved it a lot, too. It was much better than I figured it was going to be. And I went in with high hopes, too. But, you know, in the back of your head, you're always going to be like, there's no way this can live up to the title. Right. And it does, and then, you know, goes beyond. You saw it in the theater with people, obviously. What was the reaction of those there with you?
It was funny because it was just like a bunch of guys. We were all scattered out. Like you could just see one guy walking in by themselves. Clearly, nobody wanted to see it with us. It was like a weird, like stepfather's day.
Oh my goodness! Ours was very. We had a lot of couples, a lot of groups too, and there was laughs galore. I feel like watching this with an audience really added to how awesome
I bet.
It was.
I bet
because. Just like I feel like I missed some jokes because people were laughing so much at times. But yeah, absolutely great movie. We're going to tell you right off the bat, we're going to spoil the hell out of it. And you got to go see it if you hadn't. Turn this off now, come back and listen. But where do we even start?
Here's where I'd like to start. The opening credits is an homage to Wet Hot American Summer.
Oh, okay.
It's the same track that Wet Hot American Summer opens with, which is Elizabeth Banks is in that movie. She directed this movie, and it's, oh my God, it's such an epic song. I don't know the title of it.
Her husband is, I'm pretty sure it's Jefferson Airplane's Jane. Are you talking about the very opening scene in the plane, right? So you got Jefferson Airplane. Yes. People know them the most from like White Rabbit, I would say, more than any other song is what they're known for. Yeah. This one is perfect for it because it's one of those songs that if you were doing uppers, you would listen to because it gets you all pumped up.
Yes.
So that's her husband, actually, that was the gentleman in the beginning in the plane who, you know, hits his head and ends up falling out to his death after having dropped, 30 kilos? I remember at some point they actually said how much it was, and I wanted to look up how much that was worth, but I didn't want, you know, Mother Hubbard, USA, Uncle Sam, whatever the hell, knowing I'm looking up how much that stuff is worth. So I didn't. But it's 30 kilos were dropped, and all we know is that one of those bags alone is worth $14 million. So hence the urgency of the bad guys to retrieve it. Bad guys, though, is an interesting way to put them because there's really only one bad guy because his henchmen, one being his son and one being Dr. Dre's son, were amazing, and they had such great like bromance chemistry going for them that I wouldn't call them bad.
The guy in the plane is actor Matthew Rhys, I thought.
Is it? And he's not married to Elizabeth Banks? Is that
more ironically, he's married to Kerry Russell.
Oh, that's what it is. Yes, my bad. He's married to Kerry Russell
from The Americans, which they're both from the TV show The Americans. And he had such a small part, but the minutes he has on screen, he stole the show. I mean, this guy is living his best life. That's all I wanted to say about that. But you're right. The henchmen are sort of like your main characters in this movie. And
Oh no, I feel like it's a beautiful ensemble. I wouldn't even give them
you're
the
right.
name.
You're right.
I feel like nobody got short shrift in this film. Just to backtrack, I haven't seen The Americans. Do I have to see it? Because I've tried to watch that pilot, I don't know how many times, either fallen asleep. We had something better I felt like I was going to do, but I can't get through the pilot. But everyone tells me how good it is.
I never really got super into it, so
Okay.
I don't think you have to watch it.
The opposite of this in the way that pilot of The American started. It's that song do 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 turns me off immediately. I don't want to watch it just based on that song. But when we got some Jefferson Airplane at the top of this, I'm in. I'm all in.
Right.
Great opener. Then hit us with well, then we have the instance.
There's a really brilliant moment with in the titles in the beginning that they quote Wikipedia.
Yes.
It got a great laugh. It throws, it basically tells you, well, how different bears react, and like black bears and brown bears. And I forgot, there's this really great scene with the couple who are hiking up to the top of these with the Appalachians, right? Aren't we in Appalachia?
We are actually in a really funny, it exists, the Chattahoochee.
That's right,
Chattahoochee National Forest in Georgia.
Correct.
But it was filmed in Ireland.
Is that right?
For those who didn't know, yes.
That's
Elizabeth
fun.
Banks has talked a lot about how. Actually, I heard an amazing story from her. I think she was maybe on The View talking about how, because of course, we should note at the top, this is the last movie of our boy Ray Liotta. And when she was asked, like, how do you remember him? What do you take from this experience? She was just like, I don't remember anything from the movies. I loved Goodfellas. I love him in this one. But what I really remember is being inside of a restaurant and seeing him walk by, obviously having just gotten coffees with his lady, coffees in hand, arm in arm, and laughing together. It just seemed like such a beautiful memory to have of Ray Liotta. Everyone imagines him as such a tough guy, and of course in this one he is not a nice guy, and he gets his
He's not a good father, grandfather, or boss, really.
No, that's for sure.
Or human. terrible human in this movie.
But you're right, the Wikipedia thing is hilarious. It tells you that if you see a black bear, you wanna act big, you want to act like tough and kind of like act like you're gonna fight it. Do the what do they call that, the fronting? You want to front with the black bears. But if it's a brown bear, you better lay dead.
Yeah. Christoph, I forget his, from Game of Thrones, he said
he
said if it's brown, lay down or something. He's got a really great...
Yes. I think
if it's black,
I'm going to be running no matter what. I don't know how I don't run. And that's exactly what they do. Elsa, his fiance, immediately runs. But I do want to note, this is it's a short opener, and it's really, I care about both of these characters, even though she's certainly doomed immediately.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is my biggest happiness of this movie, is that every single character was well developed and dynamic, and there was no static stock characters for a movie that otherwise would be nothing but that. I feel like they totally transcended what the title is by having even this woman Elsa at the beginning, who's wearing a cowboy hat, who wants to name their first son Texas, his dismay, and he wants to have his brother's band play at their wedding, and she's like,
and she does not.
She said something really funny though.
She was like,
yes, he's
they're shit.
He says, my brother's band is super, super good. She's like, no, his singing is shit. Exactly. It was I just liked them a lot, and it was, thankfully we didn't know them so much that I didn't care when she gets pulled into the bush and then her leg thrown out. That kind of thing is a little cheesy. That happened a couple times where there's just limbs thrown by, prop guys. But it didn't matter because it cuts to the bear screaming and then distracted by a butterfly. You can't go wrong with that.
Yeah, that's right. This bear is out of his mind on drugs. And not just, and something that I thought was hilarious that I did not expect throughout the movie was that the bear because you've got to keep this movie moving.
Uh-huh.
And the way they do that is they establish that the bear loves cocaine.
Oh yeah.
And is now addicted to it and will do anything for it.
Yes.
Because when you really think of like this, this is based off of a true story. You can't imagine that the bear actually develops any type of, addiction. But
No, the
way
bear
they got
died
this-
in real life.
yeah, it's
OD'd
got to
immediately.
just have died on an overdose. But I was thinking, like, there's no way that it may have been funny if they did it accidentally, like the bear keeps accidentally getting cocaine up his nose. But no. This bear is
Hunted
seeking it
down.
out now and can smell it, which just drives this whole movie.
Yes, he's got quite the sniffer, and he can smell it like a mile away, which it drives her. We got to keep mentioning that it is a mother, because
Yes,
later
right,
we
it's a
see
mother
what
bear.
a protective
cubs.
mother she ends up being. But speaking of like how the cocaine is done, let's talk about the fun scene with the two kids who are going to they
Oh
kind of
my
like
God.
sneak away from their parents. We never see this kid Henry's parents, which I love. Like, he's such an amazing character.
Yeah.
And to see the dynamic between his friend's mom and him, because it's really them walking along, it's such an unusual dynamic. And I feel like it was well executed, and they're both so fun together.
Right. And yet, this little boy Henry, we don't, like you said, we don't meet his parents, but they are still described. Like, we know of his dad, and they give you just amount of character information that you kind of like know that his dad. I think they just described that like his dad has done coke.
Yes, indeed. He seems like a little bit of a sketch character, and it kind of makes sense that maybe
Yeah.
he's looking toward Kerry Russell's. I think it's Sari or Sari. I don't know how to pronounce her name. S-A-R-I.
You're right.
But it seems like she's kind of his surrogate parent in this, which I love. He is kind of the highlight, I would say, actor-wise, because a lot of these people we've seen before, we know they're good, right? But this Henry kid, I saw him in the Netflix one, Sweet Tooth. He's kind of the lead kid in that, who's got antlers.
He's
Great in that.
fantastic.
This
He's
I felt like
fantastic.
he was even better in. Just some
Yeah.
of the deliveries were so good. And as I was noting, that scene between him and his friend where they find the first brick of
Oh, yeah.
cocaine, and she's like, "Have you done this before?" "Oh, yeah, I do it with
Yeah.
my friend after
With
church."
his other friend.
Yeah, after church. Well, we'll do some now. Well, we're exercising now. I don't know if
Yeah.
this is. I don't like to do it when I'm exercising. And then, of
Right.
course, how do you? Okay, so how do we do this now? That the way she cut into it was like so baller. It was straight out of
Yes.
Scarface.
Right.
And
Right.
how do you do it? Then they
They
scoop
lick
up a
it.
ton and put it
Yeah.
in their mouth and cough
Like
it.
they
It
spoon it. They spoon it instead
So
of
funny.
snorting it.
was such a great
It-
moment.
It's something I think I'm not sure if I picked up on this while I was watching this the first time. Maybe you did, but you said the hiker's name. Her name was Elsa.
Her name was Elsa, but I didn't catch his name. I
His
got
name
the-
is Olaf. So they're both characters out of Frozen.
Oh, that's perfect. I was thinking about the Elsa bit, but yeah, that's exactly what they were landing.
Olaf and
with.
Elsa are trouncing through
That's-
the forest.
That's hilarious. And that's another thing I forgot to mention just now is that
That's good.
you see the American tourist like being silly and stupid and getting themselves into trouble in all other movies. It's so rare that you see a tourist in the States or a tourist couple in the States
Yeah.
kind of doing that, blundering here. And I really liked that. It felt like it was a flip-flop of what we normally see trope-wise.
I think I think that's a great call.
Oh, and I also want to mention in their opening scene, you get a little Jurassic Park homage because you see the big foot print with
Oh,
the
yeah,
puddle
yeah.
of the bear's foot. I just love that action. How can you not?
Do you think this little boy has a crush on the little girl, and that's why he'll do anything? He's ditching school for her. Or are
I'm
they
not
just
gonna.
best friends?
I think I'm gonna go best friends with it. I don't want to. I mean, granted, at that age, I definitely had crushes on girls in elementary
sure,
school.
sure.
100%. But I think it has more to do with the home, even though she's a single mom, is more stable than his home, sort of thing.
Okay,
So I feel like
Just
it's more
gravitates
about
towards
the
that.
unit than. And the way that these two are dressed up too, she's wearing a beret and he's wearing a fishing hat. It's just like such iconic characters,
Yeah,
Like, meant to be Funko Pops sort of thing.
Right.
Perfect.
They're almost like different versions of like a Wes Anderson characters, you know?
Definitely. Wes Anderson plus Tim Burton combined. Where else are we going? Oh, yeah. Okay. So we get these tourists, or she's torn to shreds. He runs off. But then we have a funny cut to Pee Wee Herman. With his PSA.
That's right.
Don't do drugs, kids.
Yeah, because we're in the middle of Reagan and Nancy Reagan's war on drugs.
Right.
So this is your brain on drugs. Pee Wee Herman. I mean,
I don't remember Pee Wee doing that. Pee Wee, of all people, should not be moralistic. I love Pee Wee. I think as a kid, he was like one of the funniest guys in the world, and I think I was him for Halloween for sure.
Sure.
That's just the irony now, looking back at him, be like,
Kids, I don't know if you should be doing this. It's serious stuff.
you know?
Yeah, and then he whips his penis out in a movie theater or something.
Yes.
Like, don't do drugs, but do whatever else you want.
So they go from the PSA, real footage, to actual real news footage of what happened with the real bear that, ended up dead with it, which is cool.
There's a few scenes in this movie where they jump from, your cinematic widescreen down to your 4:3,
right?
Which really, I thought it was effective as far as like grounding it in reality. That as insane as this movie and this idea is, it's based off of a true story.
Yeah.
Drugs were really talked about on TV constantly, but whether they're PSA or they're in the news. And that news story really made it feel that much more, real.
It did.
Yes.
But what it cuts to, I think, then helps remind you that it's not, because then we're introduced to my favorite character of the movie, maybe next to the kid, but I think I like Isaiah Whitlock Jr.'s Bob the Detective more than any other character in the movie. Every time he came on, people were laughing because he does so much with so little. It's absolutely ridiculous. This character, he's got a history hunting down Ray Liotta's Sid, and when he starts going on and on about his dog, and he talks to his deputy or whatever, Officer Reba, because she has a dog too, so he confides in her. He asks her, what kind of dog do you have? And she's like, I got a border collie. And he's like, oh yeah, border collie. That's a cool dog. It was just so.
And you're like where's he going with this? And then we see the dog in the box next to his desk.
I don't know. What kind of dog is that? It's like the way he puts it, it's too fancy. It's a fancy dog.
Either like a little poodle or a Pomeranian. I can't picture
I think
it exactly
might be.
again.
Yeah, it's just like white with like long white hair.
Not
like
a cool
spinal tap. Not a cool
unquote
dog.
Right.
Very fancy dog. But the beautiful part is later on, you realize how much he still loves the dog, even though he has
Princess.
qualms.
It's kind of.
I can't remember the name of the dog.
Not that it's a huge deal, but it just made it that more not cool.
Right. Yes. I mean, one of my favorite moments is when he's driving out there. He stops at a payphone booth because it's 1985, and he calls Officer Reba, who's literally had the dog maybe for 2 hours at this point, and just wants to say goodbye proper because he didn't know if he had said a sufficient enough goodbye to the dog. I don't know. There's these really small, funny moments that make these characters so well-rounded, and you actually care when they are in peril.
Exactly. I wasn't in love with the tattoo bit on the chest of Eddie.
Yes. All right. So yeah,
I didn't love that joke, but it does have a nice payoff at the end. But this intro to him at the bar eating like penne,
my goodness,
eating penne.
That might have been my loudest laugh was when his buddy, I got to remember this character, it's Dr. Dre's son, O'Shea Jackson Jr., plays David, and he's the one that has to rally up
Yes.
the son of the main, drug dealer.
Just lost
Eddie.
his wife.
He just lost his wife, Joan, and he got a stupid tattoo.
John. So it says
Yes,
John tattoo?
That's right. Yeah. And it says John instead of Joan. But then David's like, you know what? I'm going to have some of that penne too. Penne. And did it come with chicken or anything? No, it's just plain. I don't know why.
This bar in the middle of nowhere, you're getting Italian food at the bar. It was just another ridiculous detail.
Yes.
That made me laugh.
Yeah.
It made me laugh.
And
Penne.
ultimately, our detective is on the heels of these guys throughout the movie because somebody had overheard them talking about it at the bar.
Trucker.
So there was a logic to how the story moved. There's only two instances where I questioned the direction or the edit, and we'll talk about those later. They come up later. But for the most part, I thought it was pretty damn solid. Have you seen Elizabeth Banks' other movies? Because I have not seen Picture Perfect 2, but I did see Charlie's Angels.
Yeah. I think she's a very good director. I think and I've seen some other stuff. What else has she directed? And I thought Pitch Perfect 2 was, as far as those movies go, was fun in like she definitely gets the job. She's got like 7 director credits.
Oh wow, I thought there was only 2 prior. So you have movie 43 I never heard of, Just a Little Heart Attack. It looks like those are shorts prior, but her 3 features that are known are, this is by far her best, Cocaine Bear, Charlie's Angels, and Pitch Perfect 2.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of movie 43, but that's the other one that seems to be a feature. But I digress. I'm looking forward to what else she does, because this one just really nailed like visceral tension plus like just laugh out loud moments with these grisly scenes.
Yeah. One of my favorite scenes is the introduction of the skateboarding gang in the public bathroom of the park. And they try to jump David, and he just beats the crap out of them. Like,
yes.
This should have, and like, there's a questionable moment where Eddie's like, "Are they alive?" Because the beating he gave them was also very humorous. It shouldn't have been, but it was.
No, it was hilarious.
We get out of that, we get one of the other most hilarious characters in the movie. I don't know if his nickname is Stash or something.
Yeah, Stash is the one that leads them to the gazebo where these 3 hooligans have stashed the, bounty that they found of droves.
Yes. They've got it stashed in the gazebo, which is another funny bit. He's like, "What's a gazebo?" And he describes the gazebo. Very funny.
All those 3 guys were a lot of fun, I thought. What's so funny is we're introduced to one of them very early. We jumped so ahead of this visitor center where we're introduced to Margot Martindale, and she's getting all gussied up because she's thirsty. She's super thirsty for Jesse Tyler Ferguson's, who I did not recognize at first. It took me like till they were in the woods. I was like, oh my gosh, it's dude from Modern Family, which makes it all the funnier that she's trying to get this guy. They're just not a good match sort of thing. It's so ultimately what I'm trying to get to is the guy that's there kind of stealing stuff and saying, "I want a red sucker," she gives him the green.
Yeah.
He was kind of fleshed out, and so was Stash. But the one that wasn't was kind of the big oaf of the 3, and his death was the most unexpected, ridiculous death. It didn't involve the bear at all.
I think his name was like Ponytail or something. I think they all had very obvious like Stash, Ponytail.
Yeah, that makes sense. But the way that she is attempting to shoot at the bear, who's like all derp mode, and do you remember what the bear was doing when they opened the door, knowing he's there and she's about to shoot it? I need to go back and watch just what the bear is doing, because it seemed like he's just kind of like derpy. He wasn't in vicious mode. He was just kind of like one of those same butterfly moments where he goes from being vicious, wanting the cocaine, to kind of just being high and enjoying existence sort of thing. But then, of course, she shoots through this ponytail's head to our astonishment.
It's like never ending. The amount of the amount of things that, like, the domino effect from this bear getting cocaine is just insane.
It really is. I don't know how they milked such a fun story out of it.
The clever part of this movie is that it has so much to offer.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I want to go back, I'm sorry, to the scene with the two kids when they first find the brick. And right before they find it, he's just carving. This is where you might be right about him having a crush on her. He's carving something into the tree. We don't actually get to see it. She's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm marking my territory." And she's like, "You better not be taking a poo." I'm not taking a poo.
Yeah.
It's just like so perfectly written for kids, you know? It just, it was believable. Yeah, those two are too funny together.
Marking his territory. Which shouldn't have been poo anyway. It should have been pee.
Right. That would have made more sense.
That's how you mark your territory.
Let's jump to the first death scene in the forest, which was Jesse Tyler Ferguson's. This is the one I think most people see in the trailer more than anything. What'd you make of this sequence?
I mean, it's just unbelievable. The little boy up in the tree first, and there's that really great bit where he's like, bears can't climb trees. He's like, yes, they can. Yes, they can. And yeah, so the park ranger, obviously, you know, there's so much more to that scene though, like where you've got this other relationship going too with the woman from Americans. She's clearly has a crush on him, and so the park rangers are walking, and they have this really great moment. And if you haven't seen the behind the scenes, the making of this scene, it's really great. You should look it up. They've got them like on this great just practical effects where they're being pulled out into different directions. It's super fun to just watch the making of that scene. But yeah, he ends up going up the tree, and what does he have cocaine on him? Is that how? And the bear.
So initially the bear pulls him first, right?
Right.
Then it kind of ignores him to go for Margot Martindale because she starts to shoot at him, but then he kind of like crawls through an open brick of the cocaine, so it's all over him. And then, of course, when he then climbs the adjacent tree to the poor kid, which is a great moment where the bear is just climbing up to get the kid and just can smell one tree over.
Yeah.
And I jumped over the whole part where it attacks Margot Martindale, slashes her good, gives her a good bite on the rump, and then she's like, she starts running up. I'm going to get help.
Yes, that's the scene. I mean, where she's like in one bush, she's in the other. It's so funny.
I mean, it's like it's a bear slasher in a way, especially like the moment there where her son is in the tree and she's behind the tree, but the bear's in the front part of the tree and it begins to climb up and its claws are right by her face. It just felt like a slasher, and
it's
just
a slasher.
That the bear was.
That's happening during the daytime too, which is
that's true. It makes it even scarier in a way. Well, of course, the end we do get tonight, and I do want to talk about the final act because I will acknowledge with it doesn't compare. I guess I would say to the first two. There's just I don't know how you live up to that. It's a compliment to it because you can't beat what happened in the first two acts because it was just so much fun that it did kind of feel anticlimactic after Ray Liotta's guts are splayed and the little bears are ripping him out. I mean, I don't know what you can do about that. I don't know how you would fix that, honestly.
Well, that's just it, right? So obviously the real story ended in one way or didn't. You know, I don't know what really happened with all that coke, but that's just it. You're like, how do you wrap this all up? Somewhat of a happy ending, because you do want the little kids to be okay, right? So
of course,
you have to cover that, and then you have to give some sort of redemption moment to the two thugs, Eddie and David, because even though they're bad, we tolerate them, and like I don't know about you, but like I didn't care about their crimes, you know?
No,
like,
not at
whatever.
all.
You wanted them to just get away and their
Absolutely.
bromance. Yeah.
I mean, that's especially highlighted. I even think the cop at one point is not that bothered when he's stuck on top of the gazebo, which is just
Yeah.
so funny.
Another great
Hey,
scene.
I don't know how he got up there. When they ask him, they're like, "Oh, I jumped from that tree." They never show the tree.
Which
They
is
just washed over that.
completely fine too, which is completely fine. It
is.
even funnier. Like, you jump from a branch onto there.
Right.
But like, we don't need to see that.
No. But then him being stuck up there, and when he's like about to get down, he's like, the audience just was cracking up at this moment because they both got their guns on each other, and what can he really do from up there? And then, of course, when David's character does try to kind of like make a move, and he does shoot, and
His fingers.
it's 2 fingers off of his hand, but they're not next to each other.
Yes, and they call that out. They're like, they're not even next to each other. How did that happen?
So ludicrous. I'm cracking up at the same time that I'm worried the bear's going to come from around the corner at any minute. And of course it does.
Yes.
And that's another really fun scene. What did you think about the bear then crashing on the guy? No, I liked it, but I had a little mixed feelings about it.
It was funny, but it also made me question just the logic behind it. But then I obviously can't complain about that if I just said I was fine with how you jump onto the top of a gazebo.
Right. Yes.
But at one point he says its vagina was like on his ear or something.
that
doesn't make any sense
at all. I think maybe if the bear had fallen the other way, that might have made more sense.
Right. Oh, I think
Maybe
everyone
when
in
it
the
was
audience probably thought about that.
And they changed how it actually was executed. And I do want to note right now, that was a CGI bear, right? They didn't bring in like Bert the Bear, who's in all the movies. Because that was awesome CGI. Like, every time it's close up, I'm 100% on board with thinking that's a real bear. Were there any moments that you did not buy the CGI?
No. I mean, there's a really fun over-the-top scene where the bear is chasing the ambulance.
Oh my gosh. We got to start from the top of this scene because this is the ultimate scene in the movie, I would say. This is what I'm hearing people talk about more than anything else. But
yes, it is.
You're the jump.
No, I was just going to say there's that was probably, you know, I mean, it's very forgiving, you know, like, I will say this, though. I bet you they had some sort of practical stand-in, some sort of stuffed thing for here and there, because like when the bear's laying on top of him, I bet you some of that was like practically built, kind of like how they did Jaws. You know, there's Bruce the shark. There was a couple Bruce the sharks.
Yes, and a good moment where that might have been the case was the ambulance drive. The paramedics arrive, right? Hilarious moment where the one goes to Margot Martindale, who's kind of hiding after they push aside the dead body at the door.
She can't speak.
It
reminded me of John Candy in The Great Outdoors when he says, "Big bear, chase me. Big bear, chase me."
Definitely reminiscent of that. Okay, but yeah, the one guy goes to the closet door. I didn't love that the head was in the bucket and fell. I didn't understand what was going on with that at all. But when he does see the bear and he just hilariously, very slowly shuts the door. And of course the bear bursts through it. And then you see his claws by his face. I feel like that was a moment that you're going to get real bear claws there in his face. Because we only see the claws sort of thing. And then, of course, he's diverted because he sees a red bag.
Red bag, yes.
I didn't put 2 and 2 together the first time I saw it, but in the beginning, the only reason that Olaf is saved is because he's distracted by Elsa's red backpack.
Yeah, you're right. That was a great connection for the EMTs to have their red bag. And
my
that
goodness,
scene where Margot flies out of it and flips and is dragged across the asphalt.
Face skid. Oh my gosh, so funny. I'm sorry. I know it's grotesque, but it was all of that from her to end up strapped to the gurney and a meat crayon, I think is what they call it. She was the meat crayon. And then even the one that was driving, she ends up hitting the train and ejects to her own death. And that poor main paramedic, the guy who went into the closet, his arm is like bitten. And then the last scene we see him hit is just like the stub of the arm pressing down on the ground of the. It just was so. It was so gross and fun at the same time.
Yes.
This is around then where I had my first issue when they're walking to the gazebo. And Stash is talking about his relation. They have really funny exchanges, playing 20 questions. I'm down with all that. It was the cut that they make when Stash says Rocky and Joe. These are these characters' real name, Ponytail and, the thief.
Right.
I'm so happy I met Rocky and Joe, and it was all because of, the skills I learned from my mom or something. He had depth or whatever. But then they cut to them. We were going to go to New York City together, and it's the three of them, but one doesn't have the head, and they're kind of sitting out by a barn. It was just a really weird cut, and nobody really laughed at it. It was kind of like it was one of the few misses, and I didn't think the cut was necessary because I could have just enjoyed it without it. I don't know. What you didn't bother you at all?
I don't think it bothered me, but maybe I definitely hear you. I think I'd have to see that again to really. I don't know if it really affected me in that moment like that.
There was another moment that was similar, and it was like, why? And it's when we find out that Olaf has been chewed up and spit out, and it's just a quick cut back to him when the bad guys are about to go into the cave. We don't want this to happen to us, what we just saw, and then they cut back to having seen Olaf all dead. It just was weird. It didn't seem necessary at all.
It was also weird that he was able to help out. He had been hanging out in this area. I was under the impression though that maybe he can't move. Maybe he's stuck here. But then he's able to just get up and help them to the cave. And I don't know. That part was
yeah. Like I said, as they were trying to get to the end, I feel like
yeah.
Some machinations were occurring that were not as strong as the rest of how the plot was moving. With that being said, behind the waterfall, awesome scene. You can. I mean, when's the last time you saw that? Last of the Mohicans. I will come
that's
for
a good
you.
call.
That's love that. Call. My dream remake of Jurassic Park has a scene from the book. I guess they kind of tried to do it a little bit in Lost World. But it's a waterfall a la the Cocaine Bear one or Last of the Mohicans, where the T-Rex is trying to get Lex and Tim through it, but can't see because his eyes don't. Lost World tries to do that, but it just kills one of the worker or the hunters.
Yeah.
Not nearly as impactful as the scene from the OG book. But because ultimately those kids wanted to paint behind the waterfall.
Yeah.
That was their whole purpose, and they ended up
mission.
It ended up happening. It just happened with Ray Liotta's blood painted all over everything.
That's true. Yeah. That's true.
That was fun. It felt a little long to me there. Again, I did enjoy it. It's just a lot of people cramped in a small space, all lined up. The blocking was, I don't know what else you do sort of thing. But I forgive all of its sins in the final act for everything that happened prior. And the soundtrack alone, you got On the Wings of Love as the two are initially driving the duo,
That's
the guys.
Fun part of an 80s movie is you've got the most amazing library to pick from.
Absolutely. And Elizabeth Banks, she was, an 80s baby, or she's probably born in the 70s, I think, was listening to the 80s music. You got some Berlin in there. Berlin. I'm wondering if she consciously picked a Berlin song.
Good call.
But yeah, I look forward to seeing this one again. I am sad that the likelihood of a sequel is nil, right?
I agree. And someone's already raced together to put together a knockoff called Cocaine Shark.
Meth Shark. Isn't it Meth Shark? I heard that it was Meth
No, that's
Shark.
something else. They're also making a Cocaine Shark. And that's the problem here is that they came up with a really good idea, a really good original Hollywood movie, that it's going to be diluted by all
into
the
other stuff.
B
Monsters
movies
on
that, yeah.
Yeah, that's frustrating because the people that make Sharknado are making Meth Shark. I've heard.
Okay.
But the reason this worked is because it is a one-off and it is based on a true story. You know, I don't see
Yes.
this coming. I knew it was a true story going into it. I'd heard it via the promos
Right.
or whatever, and I think that really aided in wanting to see it. And interestingly, I think it has, relative to how much was put into it, it's been doing better than the Marvel movie, the Ant-Man.
It has been.
You know?
It's been going up against Disney, and it's been doing very well, which is like what we need. Oh, listen, I'm guilty of liking Hollywood blockbuster movies
course,
and like comic book movies, but I still want the balance. I still want originality, and I want ridiculous movies like this that people question, like, is that going to be any good? And then it is.
Yes, I completely agree, and I also am a sucker for Marvel, but Iger actually, I think it was yesterday, the day before, was quoted saying, Marvel is just this beautiful honeypot with mistakes that we're making is sequels when they're not necessary. We did not need, certainly the second Thor. I don't know if we needed, I actually liked the second Ant-Man, but I don't think that did really great either, and I want to see this new one simply for Jonathan Majors. Kang?
I saw it. Yeah.
You saw it, and?
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. It doesn't necessarily feel like the first two movies. It's
Really?
still fun.
Okay.
It's still fun, and it's going to set up a lot of things for Phase 5. But
Did it need to be seen in the theater? Because one of my issues with the Quantumania is just all this blurry color stuff in the background. I feel like it's not one of those must-sees in the theater. But
I
could be
mean,
wrong.
that's you could argue that, right?
Well, my point
Because-
is, I went to the theater to see Cocaine Bear.
yes.
I was excited to do it. It's the same reason I'm kind of wrestling. Do I go to the theater for Scream 6? You know, it's like,
Right.
am I seeing anything new that I can't wait for to come out and streaming or whatever? As much as I love Jenna Ortega now, enough to maybe see it simply because I'm looking forward to her future genre trajectory, you know?
Right. Which, by the way, the rumor mill this week is that Jenna Ortega might be starring in Beetlejuice 2.
That's very exciting.
I know. And it makes so much sense. It almost makes too much sense, which I'm
That's
kind
true.
of scared about.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's awesome. Did you have anything else to say about this lovely, lovely family film known as Cocaine Bear?
I will say that I was so pleasantly surprised. I loved the actors, the story, the cast, that you really should try to see this one in the theater, like you just said.
Yeah.
Like, you should go see this. Don't let people spoil it for you. Not that there's too many spoilers. We're spoiling it right now. But my point is, it's a really fun original movie.
Especially for those of you who downloaded it illegally, go watch it again because you won't have any watermarks or any of the crappy qualities. See it for real with an audience. You're going to love it. But in the meantime, stay alive.